football. The expectations are not great. I think a lot of people getting ready for this football season, getting ready for training camp next week, a lot of us, we look at them and we say, can they be competitive? And what is competitive? A lot of people think they'll win 4 or 5 games. Skaz thinks they might win less games this year than they did last year. One person who doesn't is Aaron Schatz. He was on Andrew Callahan's podcast this week, and here's what he had to say.
7-10 essentially this season.
Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez, and Marcus Jones. Basically, we have the Patriots with our number 3 average defensive projection. What we do know about defense suggests that the Patriots will have one of the top defenses in the league. And a big reason for that is they had a very good defense last year, and they're getting back their best pass rusher and 2 of their 3 best cornerbacks, who all missed most of last season. Now, their offense, we don't think is going to be good. We have their offense 30th, and they have a very hard schedule. We have their schedule 2nd, but the defense should be good enough for them to win more games than the 4.5 that Vegas is suggesting that they are going to win.
So the defense is going to carry the day. That's a thought. The defense is going to carry the day, and they'll finish at 7-10. Would you make that bet? That's my question to you right now. Would you make that bet? Would you feel confident in betting the Patriots winning 7 games this year? 617-779-0985. 617-779-0985. Cattle's in for Murray. I don't think it's crazy. to say the Patriots could win 7 games this year. As Kevin Garnett said, anything is possible, right? And this defense could be very good. This defense was top 10. It was number 9 in DVOA last year, and that was with both Matthew Judon and Christian Gonzalez missing the majority of the season. So you get those guys back. You hope that Keon White takes that next step. You would imagine Christian Barmore is going to continue to be one of the better young defensive linemen in football. He played fantastic the last 2 months of the season a year ago. So when you look at this team, we all know it's going to be led by defense. And I don't think it's insane to say they could win 7 games. Would I put my money on it? No. I would not be betting. I know Joe's the betting guy, right? Lifshats, Kendra. And I know that you want to get the best bang for your buck. So maybe putting money on the over would give you the best bang for the buck. But I am not betting on this team winning 7 games. I would not feel confident in that. And there are plenty of reasons. You start with the staff. Gerard Mayo. I didn't think Gerard Mayo was a terrible hire. I didn't like the process. I didn't like how they went about that. I didn't like putting that down on paper, right? That he was just going to be promoted to head coach once Belichick was gone. I did not like that. I thought it put the Patriots in a corner, put them in a bind. They had to do it. Even if you didn't want to do it. Did the Patriots know somebody like Mike Vrabel was going to be available? I don't know. Are they kicking themselves in the ass because of that deal they had with Mayo beforehand? I don't know. Didn't like the process, but did not have a huge issue with Mayo being the guy. Just didn't. There are a lot of unknowns, a lot of first-time head coaches. That's how it works. You take a shot, you take the swing. But Mayo's an unknown. We have no idea what he's going to look like and sound like and coach like once the season begins. He's a complete unknown, and he's replacing the greatest coach of all time. There's enough pressure inherently just with that job. Just replacing Belichick is a big deal. I mean, you listen to Mayo talk to the media, and he talks about how surprised he is with how much has to get done as a head coach. He had no idea. He had no clue. And now he's replacing the greatest coach of all time. What kind of style will Mayo have? What will his approach be? Will he be aggressive? Will he go for it on 4th and 1 from his own 42-yard line? Have no idea. So how is he going to coach? What is he going to do? In-game strategy? I don't know. He could be great. He could be abominable. We have no idea. So we'll see how that plays out. Then you've got Alex Van Pelt. First time as a true, legitimate play caller since 2009 with Buffalo. And that Buffalo situation was a nightmare. That got thrown onto the lap of AVP. That wasn't the plan. Don't get it twisted. They had an OC in Buffalo. And then like a week before the season kicked off, They just threw that job to Alex Van Pelt. And if you look at who Van Pelt had on that team, that offensive roster, it wasn't very good. So he has not been week in, week out. He did it a few times with Cleveland, but he has not been week in, week out an offensive coordinator since 15 years ago. How's that going to work out? I have no idea. DeMarcus Covington, first-time defensive coordinator at the NFL level. A lot of people gave Steve Belichick crap because his last name was Belichick when he first got the gig. Well, now we can look back and we can say that Steve Belichick was pretty damn good at what he did. He was a good defensive play caller. In some instances, you would say he was a great defensive play caller. He got the job done. Simple. And if it wasn't for the Belichick thing that happened, and the weirdness and awkwardness, maybe Steve Belichick would still be here. But he's out the door. And now we've got Covington. I'm less concerned about DeMarcus Covington. But you still have to look at the learning curve and understand this is the first time he's going to be calling defensive plays on the NFL level. And he might not get off to a great start. So even if he has the talent against this schedule, which we'll get to in a minute, against this schedule, all it takes a couple of bad defensive calls in a game. You give up a couple touchdowns. Now the game swings. How about the offensive line? Do we know with any fact that Chuks Okorafor is going to be a starting left tackle in this league? We don't. Now, I've talked to my buddy Greg Bedard. He feels pretty good about Chuks. The Patriots reportedly love what they've seen from him at left tackle. But let's see what happens when the pads get on. Let's see how he looks. The fact is, you might not have a left tackle week one that you can trust. That's a problem. Who's playing right tackle? Is it going to be Mike Onwenu? He was signed to be the right tackle, but then he was playing at guard during minicamp. Is it going to be Onwenu? Is it going to be Caden Wallace, who you drafted? We don't know. And until we know that answer, I'm not sure what this offensive line looks like. Is Onwenu going to be at tackle, or is he going to be at guard? And if he's at tackle, who's playing right guard? I don't know. Is it City So? I don't know. City So is playing at left guard at minicamp. Does he go back to right guard? Then who's playing left guard? We can play this game all day. So the offensive line's a question. The schedule. And I know that Schott said that. The schedule, the second toughest schedule, and they have the Patriots as the 30th offense in the league this year. But the schedule is a beast. I mean, a murderer's row of quarterbacks. It's crazy. Just in the division. Now, I'm not the biggest Tua guy. Not a huge Tua fan. But I'm a Mike McDaniel fan as far as calling offense. I'm a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle fan. That Miami offense is tough. You've got Aaron Rodgers twice if he can stay healthy. You've got Josh Allen twice. That's just the division. Then you've got to go against Chicago with Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and those weapons. You've got to go against San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, who you're trying to trade for right now as I speak, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. You got to play against Justin Herbert, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You start the season against Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, another receiver that maybe you have on your radar as you get ready for at least next offseason if that's the case. So a murderer's row of quarterbacks and offenses. And then you've got travel. The Patriots travel a ton this year. They didn't get those back-to-back games out on the West Coast. They got to fly out, fly back, and then fly out again later on. And I think they've gotten better offensively. I think their wide receiver room is better. Their quarterback room is better. Their tight end room is better. And maybe even their running back room with Gibson over Zeke, even though Zeke was one of the better revelations during last year's awful season. But I still think this offense, you got a bunch of good, not great talent. And the question to me is, I can believe, you can get me into buying into the idea that this defense is going to hold offenses to about 23, 24 points a game. Given the schedule, I think you're looking at 23, 24 points a game. The question is, ultimately, do you think this offense is going to give you 24, 25 points per game? Are they going to be able to hang? I'm not willing to make that bet. Are you? Aaron Schatz on Andrew Callahan's podcast this week says he's got the Patriots at 7-10. That a little too high for you? I'm not making that bet. I'm not placing that bet on the 7 wins. But maybe you disagree. 617-779-0985 is the telephone number. Again, 617-779-0985. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray on this Thursday. We'll take your calls, get your reaction. Also, the most ridiculous sports take of the week coming up next.
More Joe Murray coming up on the Sports Hub.
Quick, smelly.
It's Joe Murray on the Sports Hub.
You can get ready for the symbol. Here we go. Thursday night. Nick Cattle's with you, in for Joe Murray. Skaz and Quinnipiac Kevin in the production room. Even though Quinnipiac Kevin is like nowhere to be found. I think he has spent a total of 3 minutes in the studio since this show has begun. Does he have pressing matters to get to? He's an intern. What is he doing?
Very, very busy man.
Yes.
Quick bathroom trip, I think.
Oh. I have to take plenty of calls, Nick. I got to take plenty of calls. I got to make sure that my agenda for the weekend is straight. Don't tell Kevin, but I like Christina better. That's my evaluation. Kevin down, Christina up. I don't trust Kevin. Something in his eyes. Skaz, Patriots, 7 wins. You taking that bet?
I'm taking the under on 7 for sure. I can't. I look at the schedule and I can't find 7 wins.
It's tough, man. The schedule is just outrageous. I know some people, Greg Bedard, one of them, trying to sell me on this idea that the schedule is not as daunting as some say. I disagree. I respectfully disagree. I think this schedule is brutal. You know what else is brutal? This is almost too easy. But ESPN released this, top 100 list of pro athletes since 2000. In the top 3, Michael Phelps, Serena Williams, Messi, and then 4 and 5. 4, you got LeBron, and 5, you've got Tom Brady. Now, let me just say this up front. ESPN, mission accomplished. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to drive engagement. Those 2 special words in every radio station, every television station, every media brand. Drive engagement. That's what they're trying to do. So mission accomplished. Because people are engaging over this list. The top 3, I understand. And I know some people might say Brady should be number 1, but I think you could argue, right? You could absolutely argue that Michael Phelps could be the top athlete since 2000. What that guy did on the Olympic stage is bananas. He's ridiculous. I don't think anybody's going to touch him. I mean, just unreal. You can look at Serena Williams and say the same thing, the way she dominated women's tennis. Just an absolute beast. Messi's won about 1 trillion championships. He's got like 55,000 MVP. He's out of this world. So arguably, you could look at that list and you can look at Phelps, Serena, and Messi and say, arguably, those 3 athletes could historically, in the past couple of decades, the last 24 years, could be number 1 in their sport. As a matter of fact, you can argue that they could be the best in their sport of all time, not just since 2000. So the conversation inevitably leads to LeBron versus Brady. And as I said, I think it was Tuesday night, or maybe it was over the weekend. I don't know. These shifts all blend together, but it's clicks season, baby. We talk about clicks right now. It is a challenge to get clicks. It's a challenge to get clicks. It's a challenge to get phone calls on a radio show. It's a challenge to get anything in the sports media. Next week, now we're in business. Next week, NFL training camp around here in New England, baby. We're cooking. We're back. But right now, you're trying to find something, right? You're trying to find something that will drive the engagement. Those 2 words again. And here we are with LeBron getting selected over Tom Brady in this ESPN list. Brady is universally recognized as the best player in NFL history, right? I mean, we've gone beyond the Lawrence Taylor argument. We've gone beyond the Joe Montana days. We're well beyond that. Brady is number 1. And there's no doubt about that in my eyes. He is absolutely the best that's ever done it in the game of football. Can you say that about LeBron? No. And I'm not going to get into that tired Michael Jordan versus LeBron conversation, but the fact is, it's a conversation. It's a discussion. Even if you lean towards the LeBron part of that argument, it is still a back and forth death match. MJ versus LBJ. Brady doesn't have that. There's no back and forth. Now, maybe 10 years from now, we can talk about Patrick Mahomes, but right now, Brady owns the top of the mountain. And nobody is going to argue that. At least nobody who's being genuine about the conversation. There's no beef. It's Brady. Game, set, match. Over. You look at titles. Brady 7, LeBron 4. This is just ESPN's obsession with LeBron James. Look at how they're shoving Bronny James in front of our face constantly. The guy scored like what? What did he score last night? 9 points, 12 points, and they're going crazy. They're throwing a parade. He hit a three-pointer. It's like he won the NBA title. It's this obsession with LeBron. ESPN can't get over LeBron James because why? Engagement. The word again, right? Clicks. And they just can't get themselves away from LeBron James. I mean, when you look at this list, if you read it, as you pull this list up, Skaz, you read one of the beginning lines when they're talking about LeBron James. This is what is written. No athlete has dominated the public conversation like LeBron has. Dominated the public conversation. So with LeBron, it's not necessarily about the game and what he's accomplished. It's that he's dominated the public conversation. Please tell me, riddle me this. Why does LeBron dominate the public conversation? Because ESPN lets him dominate the public conversation. ESPN is responsible for most of that conversation. And here they are again, driving that conversation to get that engagement by using LeBron James. It's so old. It's so tired. ESPN loves themselves the LA market. Can't get enough of it. LA and New York, LA and New York, New York and LA. They love it. They give LA a nice big hug. Oh, I don't want to let you go, Lakers. You got Stephen A. Smith saying that the Lakers have been more relevant recently than the Celtics. He said that just going back like a month and a half, 2 months ago. Do yourself a favor. Take like 5 minutes and look up what the Lakers have done in the past 20 years. Okay? They won the championship in the bubble. Other than that, not good. Especially compared to the Celtics, but that doesn't matter. It's the Lakers. It's LA. It's LeBron. It is just this obsession. And this is why people laugh and they mock ESPN. And Pat McAfee called them out. Called them out yesterday, right? He said, this is why people don't like you. This is why people don't like ESPN. This is the beef that people have with the network. It's because it's so transparent. It's not a legitimate list. No legitimate list would have LeBron ranked ahead of Tom Brady. No legitimate list. Not a single one. This isn't genuine. This is to get attention. Mission accomplished. Why do you think they released the list when they did? They know the slow time. They got to drive programming. They've got to give Get Up something to say. They've got to give Mike Greenberg something to say. They've got to create some kind of debate for Stephen A. Smith to yell about. And here it is. When in doubt, just go to LeBron. That's the tried and true plan. When in doubt, go to LBJ. And who voted on this? A list of ESPN quote-unquote contributors. Who the hell is that? There were 70,000 votes in this thing. 70,000. Were they just grabbing like interns? No disrespect, Kevin, but you get it. Were they just plucking 20-year-olds out of the hallways? Hey, come vote on this thing. 70,000 votes? ESPN contributors. A little vague on the definition. There are lots of contributors to that network. Was it the entire network? I mean, it's just, I mean, you look at this and you got to laugh because it's a complete and utter joke. I would tell you that LeBron James doesn't even think he should be ranked ahead of Tom Brady, but I'm not going to go that far. That might be even more outrageous. 617-779-0985. Again, 617-779-0985. Don't even try to make sense of it. But if you have thoughts, if you want to call in and crush ESPN for putting LeBron James ahead of Tom Brady, be my guest at 617-779-0985. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray. Aside from your reaction, Brad Stevens comments on the Celtics sale for the first time. Hear what he said next.
Sports Hub headlines.
The Red Sox 2025 schedule was We're in the rotation, aren't we? This is not Coolio, I remember from the other night. Cattle's in for Joe Murray. By the way, you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like. Maybe you don't want to. That's fine, too. We all make decisions in this world. It's at Nick C. Radio. At Nick C. Radio. Skaz follows me, so maybe you should follow me. That's my reasoning. Brad Stevens was hanging out in Vegas this week. Continues to hang out in Vegas. Not a bad gig that Brad has. And it was the first time that Stevens had a chance to talk with the media since the Wick Grossbeck family sale news came out. Here was Stevens.
Well, I mean, I learned not soon, or not long before everybody else did, that was going to happen. And listen, I obviously am very thankful for Wick and his family and everything they've done, and and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what happens from here. I don't want to get too far into the weeds of it all, but how does it affect us? It doesn't really right now. I mean, from the standpoint of corporate side or basketball operations, we're just head down doing what we think is best for the now of the Celtics and the future of the Celtics, and we're lucky we've got a good team.
That is just not a song that goes with Brad Stevens behind him. Makes me feel a little weird. And get the R&B or whatever the hell's going on behind him. So Stevens says he really had no idea. He really had no idea that this Grousbeck news was going to come out. One of two things here. Either Wick is great at keeping things quiet, or Wick was blindsided. Skaz, when do you think Wick found out that Daddy Grousbeck wanted to sell the team?
I lean more towards the Wick was blindsided just because of his comments, during and around the finals when he told Paul Pierce, we're not going to sell the team. We're never going to sell the team, all that stuff. So I think Wick was blindsided in this.
Feels that way, doesn't it? The Paul Pierce thing, as you mentioned, he talked about we're not worried about making money. We're worried about winning championships. We get paid in parades or whatever he said. And I don't think somebody as smart and savvy as Wick would come out and say those things if he knew that immediately after winning a championship, his family's share of the team was going to be up for sale. So I do think Wick was surprised. Now, maybe he heard, maybe he found out before the playoffs began. I don't know. Maybe. And maybe he just felt like he had to kind of say what he had to say to not put people on, the chase. And he felt uncomfortable. And he just figured this is going to come out at some point, but right now is not the time. Let's just all focus on the postseason. Let's focus on this run. I didn't love the timing, by the way, and I don't think many people did. The champagne wasn't even dry. There was still confetti in the streets. Confetti was still on Causeway when they were like, oh, by the way, Wick's going to sell. Which then we found out it was really the Grousbeck family. It was Papa Grousbeck. And really, people might say, how do you not tell Brad Stevens? What's it matter? What is Brad Stevens going to do? Him knowing does nothing. He's an employee. That's all he... If they told Brad, then Brad would have to keep the secret. Like, you're putting the weight of the world on Stevens if you tell him. So it's better to just tell everybody at the same time. It's not like he's going to change anything. It's not like it changes his job. And again, people keep saying this kind of stuff. We talked about it last night. Stevens says this is not going to affect them right now. So Stevens is the latest person to say nothing's going to change. As far as right now, nothing is going to change. In the foreseeable future, nothing is going to change. Doesn't affect what I do, doesn't affect what we do. Tatum came out and said that they were reassured that nothing was going to change. It was going to be business as usual. There's a lot of reassuring happening. And it all has to do with that 51-49 two-part process. Because the Grousbecks, they're going to sell 51% of their shares within the next, 6 months, 8 months to a year, whatever it is. they're going to sell 51% of their shares. Now, if you do the math and you say that the Grosbecks control 60% of the team, 51% is about 30%. 30.6%, I think it is. So that makes sense. Because if you're not closing until 2028, that means the new ownership group for the next 3 years will only own 30.6% of the team, which I'm not a rocket scientist or a mathematician, but that's just under 70% owned by the Grosbecks and the other owners that have already been there with the Grosbecks. So I think that's what's going on here. I think Wick knows he and the other owners are still going to have the majority of this team until 2028, which is why he keeps talking about being governor until 2028. And that's why I think he's reassuring people like Stevens and Tatum, saying nothing's going to change. And by the way, I'm not sold on the idea that Brad Stevens stays once Wick is gone. I don't think that's a fait accompli. Stevens is, I think, 47 years old? Somewhere in that area. I could see Stevens be the type of guy that at 50 says, I've done what I can do, right? Stevens kind of reminds me of like a Theo Epstein. And Theo always said, don't spend more than like 10 years on one job, because if you're there for more than 10 years, human nature takes over. He always wants to be driven. He always wants to be motivated. That's why he went from the Red Sox to the Cubs. Then he went to baseball. Then he left baseball to join the Fenway Sports Group. He's always looking for the next big challenge. And I think Stevens, and I could be totally wrong, but Stevens, he feels to me like that kind of person. That once he wins multiple championships or whatever the case may be, he's going to walk away. He'll walk away like 50. Maybe he goes back to head coaching. Maybe he tries to do something else with his life. Maybe he gets into politics. I don't know. He's from the Midwest. A nice in the center kind of guy, right? Who knows? But I don't think if you're Stevens and a new ownership group comes in, that might be it for Brad. That might be it for Brad, because he might say, I had trust with this ownership. And, Wick was one of the guys that wanted me to be here and have this position. What if the new owner or owners meddle? What if it's not Pags, even though I still think it could be Pags? But if it's not him, the team is going to be aging. The money is going to be stockpiling on the payroll. And he's already won a title. All right, as far as Jaylen Brown, here's what Stevens had to say about JB.
Jaylen's a great player. Jaylen, I don't think there's any doubt that Jaylen could be on any team, could be on any Olympic team in any year, right? And but at the end of the day, I think his approach, and he talked about how he called Derek. He talked about his own feelings from it. But I know this about Jaylen: whether he has success and gets all the accolades like Finals MVP or Eastern Conference Finals MVP, or if he feels like he got left off the team, I know he's going to be motivated and hungry regardless. That's what I've always loved about him. He always comes back to work.
This is why Brown spoke on Monday. This is exactly why he spoke on Monday. And I would not be surprised if the Celtics told Jaylen to speak on Monday to the media. It's so that Jaylen can get ahead of things. He can address it. So when Brad Stevens is talking to the media, he can reference what Jaylen said. He can say, oh, look, he and D. White are fine. He said they had the conversation. It is what it is. So that's why Brown spoke this week. I'm not sold that Brown wanted to speak. Remember, at the ESPYs, he didn't want to say much, right? When he was on the red carpet, he didn't want to say much. And all of a sudden, halftime on Monday, he's like, let's all get together. Let's have a little bit of a powwow. And it's because he wanted to get ahead. He wanted to get ahead. So guys like Brad, when he's asked about it, Brad can say, hey, Jaylen already addressed it. We're moving on. We're moving forward. We're now focused on basketball. That's why he spoke. 617-779-0985 is the telephone number. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray. Skaz on the ones and twos. We'll get to some of your reaction. Also, you'll never believe what they found on the moon. It's coming up.
You're listening to Joe. You're listening to Joe Murray on 98.5. You're listening to Joe Murray on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Visit the
do want to get to the moon and what they found on the moon. Do that in a couple of minutes. But first, Tommy and Newton want to talk about this ESPN list, this Fakakta list. What's up, Tommy? Tommy.
It's clear, all right. Yeah. Wait 1 second.
All right. Tommy? Let's see how long this takes. Tommy? Tommy, are you there?
What about
Tommy. All right. Let's go to Patrick. Patrick on the pike. What's up, Patrick?
All right, so you can't compare basketball to football, but I'm a stats guy, not an analytics guy. I just want to throw out some stats. What was LeBron James' winning percentage during a regular season throughout his career? Compare that to Brady. What was the same for the divisional playoffs, the conference playoffs, and championship? Now I'll throw this one out. What was LeBron James' comeback percentage for all those categories compared to Tom Brady? There is no comparison. That's just my thought on that. But I'm more mad at Robert Kraft for being cheap. He could have had Mike Grable all day long. All he had to do is pay Mayo off $10 million and get almost a complete coaching staff with a former MVP coach. Instead, he takes Mayo and a ragtag fugitive fleet of washed-up old coaches. And by the way, how's that weight room looking? The worst-rated weight room in the NFL. He hasn't spent a dime on that. How are the player amenities? We're going to draw a lot of people with what they get going on there. I just don't get it. But those are my two takes, and I'll listen to you on my way from Boston to New Hampshire on the pike, like I do every 3 days of the week.
All right, Patrick, thank you. Good luck on that drive, my friend. Good luck on the drive. Couple things. The Robert Kraft cheap thing, that doesn't have anything to do with Mayo, Vrabel, any of that. There's no owner in the NFL, and I mean no owner. There's not a single owner in the NFL that would have paid Belichick to leave, paid Mayo to leave, and then paid Mike Vrabel to join the team. There's no owner that is going to pay, for all intents and purposes, 3 head coaches for a single year. It's not going to happen. The problem was not Kraft being cheap. The problem was Kraft putting into a contract that Mayo was going to be given the job when Belichick left or when he was fired. That was the problem. I think the Krafts thought Belichick was going to be around a little bit longer than he ended up being around, and it bit them in the ass because then they had no recourse. Mayo had it in his contract. Belichick was owed, what was it? People believe upwards of $25 million. And even if they came to some kind of an agreement so Belichick could try to chase that Atlanta job, which obviously he did not get, you're still going to pay Belichick something. Belichick's not walking away empty-handed. So, in essence, Kraft was already paying 2 head coaches. He's not going to then let Mayo walk and hire Mike Vrabel. There's no owner. I mean, think about it. I don't know what Mayo's making, but let's say Mayo is making $8 million. And you had to pay Belichick. Let's say you had to pay him $20 million. So now you're paying $28 million. There's no owner that is then going to fire Gerard Mayo, pivot, and hire Mike Vrabel for what? 10 to 15 million? Robert Kraft is not going to spend $35 to $40 million in a single season on a coaching situation. It ain't happening. And nobody is. There's no owner in their right mind that would pay that kind of money to deal with the head coaching. Just no way. There's just absolutely no way. As far as the weight room, they are addressing it. From what I know, it's not done yet, right? But they are addressing it. They are building a new weight room. And as a matter of fact, it came out going back a couple months ago. They're going to be looking to build an entirely new facility pretty much. So right now, it's not good. But they do have a plan. That came out a couple of months ago. They do have a plan to update, pretty much just build a new facility that is, a little bit more representable than, is that a word? A little bit more representable than, if it's not, I just did it again. I don't care. When you look at, the facility here versus facilities across the NFL. So they are working on addressing that. The kid care, not sure. All right, I'm going to give Tommy another chance. Tommy and Newton. Let's see. See if he's ready. Let's see if the radio's down. Tommy, are you there?
I am here.
Nice. What's up, buddy?
All right. I'm calling. This was a while ago, but I'm calling to about Stephen A. Smith and ESPN.
Yep.
I think Stephen A. Smith is one of the worst reporters on all sports talk shows. I remember he made a Donovan Mitchell take a while ago. I think it was about a year ago. He said Donovan Mitchell was the greatest player to ever play for the Utah Jazz. And I think that's kind of an insult. I don't even like Carmelo Anthony that much, but I think he was a better player for the Utah Jazz than Donovan Mitchell was.
Hold on.
I agree.
I appreciate you, Tommy, but Melo, did he mean Karl Malone? I'm hoping he meant Karl Malone.
Your guess is as good as mine on that one.
Certainly didn't mean Melo.
We're going to blame intern Kevin for that call.
Come on, Kevin. What are you doing back there? That's on you, man. Now, Tommy, as far as Stephen A., yeah, I would not go to Stephen A. to be the most factual dude on television, okay? He was ranting and raving. What was it about? I think it was about Paul George catch and shoot or something like that. He's like, I don't know why you would go Paul George and catch and shoot. And pretty much saying that he was one of the worst catch and shoot players in the league, and he's actually one of the best. I believe that's what it was. Look that up, Skaz. I think Stephen A. was talking about Paul George and the catch and shoot, and he was completely wrong about his ability to catch and shoot threes. Saying like, he can't catch and shoot threes. And Paul George is like one of the best in basketball. So yeah, I would not recommend standing by Stephen A. Smith takes.
Yeah, just another very quick Google search. He criticized Paul George not being great at, just like you said, catch and shoot threes. He shot 45.4% last year, which is very good to great, I would say, at catch and shoot threes.
Yeah. If you're shooting 45%, any type of three, that's really good. So I agree with you on the Stephen A. thing, but got a little lost in the Melo thing. Not quite sure we got there. Not quite sure we connected on that one, Tommy. But I appreciate the phone call, bud. Cattle's in from Murray. More in 90 seconds.
From the Town Fair Tire Studios, relatable, reliable, and even relentless at times.
We're doing it live.
This is Boston's home for sports. WBC-FM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub. Sports Hub headlines.
By the way, representable is a word. Sometimes you just don't know when you have a live microphone and you say something, you're like, that doesn't sound right. Is that a word? It's a word. And Kevin still stinks. So we've accomplished those two things in the last 3 minutes. Red Sox 2025 schedule was released earlier today. The Sox open on the road in Texas for 4 games beginning on March 27th. They then travel to Baltimore for 3 before their first home game against the Cardinals on April 4th. Speaking of the Sox, they return tomorrow night to face the Dodgers in L.A. Nick Pivetta will get the start. Brian Bayo on Saturday, Cutter Crawford on Sunday. Some NFL news. Randall Cobb officially retired from the league, and the Dolphins placed Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips both on the PUP list today. In the NBA, Clippers trade Russell Westbrook to Utah, along with Carmelo Anthony. No, it's just a joke. Just a little Utah joke there. Clippers traded Westbrook to Utah on a sign-and-trade deal that lands former PC point guard Chris Dunn in L.A. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Westbrook will be bought out by Utah and end up signing with the Nuggets. And finally, at the Open in Troon, Scotland, England's Daniel Brown leads at 6 under with Ireland's Shane Lowry 1 shot behind, and America's Justin Thomas third at -3. Headlines are brought to you by Safety Insurance, providing comprehensive coverage for your auto, home, and business. Ask your independent agent about safety. I'm Nick Cattles on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Your next update at 8:30.
Here we go. Boom. I win. Kaboom. Yeah.
It's a buddy. We've got a passion for Boston sports. Get angry. 98.5 The Sports Hub.
If you're watching on YouTube, we have some company in the studio just hanging out on this Thursday. Just come on in, right? Just let them all in. That's what we say. Except for Kevin. He's on the bad list tonight. He's on the ish list. So there's no need. Maybe I'm wrong. Skaz, you tell me. Is there any need to discuss Bill Belichick returning to coaching right now? Do we need to get into that?
I mean, we just saw ESPN put out that top 100 list. People might be clamoring for takes, but no, I would agree. It's not really a story right now, at least to me, if he's going to be coaching next season.
I mean, I feel like we talked so much Belichick for like 3 solid months when the season was over about what his next move might be. So I'm not going to pay attention to that part. Like Tom Pelissero joined Rich Eisen this week, and he was talking about Belichick. But here is one thing. Here is one thing that stood out to me.
I think that with Belichick, you have to look at what are the places that are in good shape from a quarterback perspective. Either they have one or they have the resources to get one. Who is in shape from a salary cap perspective, where they've got the ability to build things a little bit more quickly, where he doesn't have to go in there and spend 2 years making hard personnel decisions, cutting guys, trading guys just to get things back, because he's going to want to be able to get this thing rolling. He's not getting younger. Bill's what, 73, I believe? But I think it's got to be a spot where he's got a quarterback who can get one. He's got cap space to go get additional players, and where he's got the type of organizational setup that he thinks he can succeed in. So you've got to be thinking about the stable organizations, maybe some of the blue blood organizations, and the owners who are going to let Bill Belichick be Bill Belichick. It doesn't have to be the same way it was in New England. This stage of his career, Bill probably knows he'd be better off having a strong personnel person that he's working with. And he had that in recent years with Elliot Wolf, who's now the head of whatever his title is, football director.
Scouting or director?
It's not, director of scouting. It's not GM, but it's essentially GM. He probably knows he needs somebody like that with him here. So it's not Bill needs all the control, but he does need the right spot to set up the program the way that he thinks he needs to.
All right, so he brings up the quarterback there, right? And this idea of he's going to need a quarterback. He's going to need the quarterback situation to be stable. Here's my advice. Here's my advice to Belichick and the team that hires Belichick next year to be their head coach, because I do think he is going to return to the sidelines next year. Here's my advice. Don't let Bill Belichick touch the offense. There it is. There's my advice. If you're going to hire Bill, make sure Bill is not running the offense. Make sure Bill is not making the decisions on that side of the football. If Belichick wants stability at quarterback, given the recent track record here in New England, what happened post-Brady, which we'll get into in a minute, I would advise Bill to stay away from the quarterback position. Don't evaluate it. Don't even watch film. If you hire Josh McDaniels, let Josh do that part, okay? If Josh is going to be your OC, let him run the offense. Let him pick the quarterback. Let him work with the quarterback. Stay away as far as you can away from that position. Because the reason why, in my eyes, Bill Belichick is no longer here in New England is because of that position. It's because he helped drive Tom Brady out of town. Brady has said as much. So have others. Maybe if Bill was a little bit more amenable to certain things, Brady would have stayed here and retired, a New England Patriot. But as we know, that didn't happen. And then you failed to have a plan post-Brady, as we know. 2018, you had a pivot, start running the football because Brady was upset. Remember, they were a very good team, but the offense was kind of cratering. And McDaniels and Belichick, they got together. They said, we got to run the football more. We got to become a running team. They did that. They go on to win the Super Bowl. Fantastic story. And then in 2019, Brady starts, right? They're 8-0, and Brady is the most miserable quarterback for an 8-0 team that we've ever seen. And that was because Brady saw the writing on the wall. He knew that their offense wasn't very good. He knew that their wide receivers weren't very good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you failed in your evaluation of players. You failed in your execution to help the greatest of all time. Greatest of all time leaves. You failed to have a plan at quarterback, right? Remember, everybody was trying to sell us on Jarrett Stidham? I'm old enough to remember that people were trying to sell us on the idea of Jarrett Stidham being a starting quarterback in the NFL. He was going to be the guy that was going to replace Tom Brady until Cam Newton showed up. Last second move. Decided to go with Cam. The Cam experiment lasted a year, inevitably failed. Then you draft Mac Jones, and we all know what happened, right? You draft Mac, first year goes pretty well. Then you decide to stick Matt Patricia and Joe Judge out there on the offensive staff, which was a disaster. Your offensive line was a disaster because you had Matt Patricia and other people trying to coach that position, coach that offensive line, and they all pretty much failed at doing so. You failed on the evaluation of wide receivers. Tyquan Thornton hasn't worked out. We all know about N'Keal Harry. We know about the decisions to say no to DeAndre Hopkins when he would have signed a contract here. You drew the line on Jacoby Myers over like $1 million per year, which is just outrageous in hindsight and was ridiculous in the moment. So my advice is, if Bill wants to coach again, great. But if Bill wants to coach again for a team that has stability at the most important position in football, then Bill needs to look himself in the mirror and stay far away from that decision-making. He needs to hand the keys off to somebody else to make that call. He needs to realize the shortcomings. He needs to change. He needs to understand that football now is offense. And you need at least a decent offense to survive in this league. So that's my advice. Bill, if you want stability at the quarterback position, stay away from the quarterback position. And I still think we can go over all of this and we can talk about Bill's future and Bill's past. And the $100 million question remains. Does Bill want to be in full control of a football program? Because if he does, I'm not trusting him with a quarterback. And that might sound crazy to people because he obviously was here, drafted Brady, helped develop Brady, decided to keep 4 quarterbacks during Brady's rookie season, which everybody overlooks, which allowed them to keep Brady on the roster, which allowed him to be here in 2001 and take over for Bledsoe. But the last 4 or 5 years of his tenure here, he showed zero ability in taking care of the quarterback. And it was really a 101 of how not to deal with a young quarterback. Everything that you don't want to do is what they did. So if Belichick wants to come back and he wants to be successful and he wants to have a stable quarterback situation, let your offensive coordinator deal with it. Let your OC have their own staff. Let your OC pick the quarterback, develop the quarterback. Or maybe you just try to spend a bunch of money on a quarterback, which, as we know, is antithetical to how Belichick does business. But maybe, just maybe, he's looking, the clock is ticking. He's got like a couple years left. So maybe he's willing to spend, I don't know, $60 million a year on Dak Prescott if he's available. But if you want a stable quarterback situation, I don't think BB is your guy. Not from what we saw from 2019 to the end of his tenure here in New England. 617-779-0985. 617-779-0985 is the telephone number. And you got to think. You got to think. He's going to be, 73 years old. Are you going to give Belichick full autonomy? I think that's the main reason why he's out of a job right now. I think that's the main reason why he couldn't get a job this offseason. It wasn't because of his lack of football acumen. It wasn't because people don't believe he can coach game day anymore. I think it's because they're looking at him wondering, you want to run the shop? And if you are going to run the shop, do we trust you running the shop on offense? Defense, there is no question. Defense, he still has his fastball. 617-779-0985. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray on this Thursday night. Your thoughts? If I am any team looking to hire Bill Belichick next year, the one thing I want to make sure is somebody else is handling the quarterback position. That would be a priority for me. Your thoughts on that? Also, an ESPN ranking that Patriots fans won't be angry about. It's coming up next.
More Joe Murray coming up on the Sports Hub.
Skaz loves this song. It's one of his favorites.
Watch out.
He used to go to the club back in the day and demand this to be played. Yes, sir. May I help you? I demand D-Light to be played right now. If not, I will voice my displeasure with you, DJ. Did I talk about my fridge situation, Skaz? Did I talk about that on the air? I didn't bring up the fridge thing? I don't know. These 3 night shows. It's been a while since I worked 3 days in a row. I'm a little foggy here.
I'm not remembering a fridge take.
Found out that there might be an issue with my freezer.
Oh, this is, yes. You did mention this, how you are not living there, but
Yeah.
a house. Yes, okay, now it's ringing some bells.
I own a house down in Virginia Beach. And the freezer apparently just stopped working. I got the text today that I did not want to get. We got to buy a new fridge. And now my tenants, we got to get them the fridge, obviously, ASAP. So my wife is literally digging through Home Depot and stuff like that down in Virginia to see what's in stock. And I'm going to buy a fridge tonight at some point. So there you have it.
It's an exciting purchase.
Oh yeah, especially when you're the one not using the fridge. It's so awesome. It's fantastic. Exactly what I wanted. Let's go to Bob in Millbury. Wants to talk about the Patriots. Hey, Bob.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, just talk about everybody talks about Kraft and everything, and I love Robert Kraft. Since he bought the team and everything. But kind of disappointing this year because I think they were like the second or third highest salary cap relief, or however you want to say it. Most money to spend. And they did hardly anything.
See, I would disagree with that, Bob. I appreciate the phone call. This is a myth to me. As far as this offseason, I know the history. Of Robert Kraft, and when you look at the last 20-plus years, trust me, I get it. I truly understand that they have been towards the bottom of the league in spending, and I know Felge has talked about it nonstop the last 20 years. Before he was here at 98.5, since he's been here at 98.5, he has been pounding that table. I disagree with this idea that the Patriots have not spent money. That could not be further from the truth as far as what they've done this offseason. It's just not true. And I know some people want to try to make it true, but it's not true. Here's the issue. I believe that people are frustrated with who was paid, not the fact that money was sent out, not the fact that money was spent. The idea of bringing people back from a 4-win team. I think that's the beef that a lot of people have with this offseason. And I think some people act as if bringing people back, signing Duggar to the extension, signing Owenu to the contract, bringing back Anthony Jennings, extending Jelani Tavai, extending Ramondre Stevenson, bringing back Kendrick Bourne, bringing back Hunter Henry. I think people look at those moves and they're frustrated by those moves because they're not the new shiny toy in aisle 5. And because of that frustration, people throw out the question, well, what did they really do? They didn't do enough. They didn't spend. They had a ton of money to spend, but they didn't spend. They didn't spend enough. And the fact is that they did spend money. It's they spent the vast majority of that money on their own guys. And I've said this from the beginning of this offseason. I am not opposed to keeping good football players. And good football players do exist on 4-win teams. I know it's tough for some people to believe that, but it's true. Good football players do indeed exist on 4-win teams. And if you think I'm lying to you, If you think I'm misleading you about how the Patriots have spent money, we all know Pat's cap, right? Miguel Benzin does a great job, Pat's cap, on Twitter. So Pat's cap tweeted this on July 13th, 5 days ago. The Patriots, right? The Patriots, when you look at this offseason, up until July 13th, we're 9th in active cash spending, 9th in total cash spending, 5th in cap to cash ratio. They were 8th in free agency spending. They were 8th in total free agency spending. They were 8th in average per year. They were 6th in the NFL in full guarantees given out, and they were 4th in the NFL in first-year cash given out. So they are a top 10 spending team this offseason. Now, that might not be good enough for some people, but to say that they haven't spent money, that is not true. I would also remind you that they put $40 million guaranteed on the table for Calvin Ridley. If he signed that deal, we'd be talking about a whole different situation. Those numbers I just gave you would make a jump. And let's not forget that we just were told by Josina Anderson that the Patriots have been calling the 49ers about Brandon Ayuk. And I said this the other night. You're not calling the Niners, you're not calling John Lynch and talking about Ayuk if you're not willing to pay that guy, I don't know, 70, 75 million guaranteed. You're only making that call if you're Elliott Wolf, if you got the okay from the owner to make that phone call. So am I telling you they've spent at the top of the market when you look at total spending and they're at the top of the league this offseason? No, but they have spent money. They've spent a good chunk of money. So let's not go out there and say, oh, they cheaped out this offseason. They gave Michael Wenu top of the market money. They gave Kyle Duggar top of the market money. They gave Stevenson a fair contract. Some people think they overpaid Ramondre Stevenson. So it's the fact that the groceries aren't sexy enough for some people. That's what is driving the frustration. But when you look at the offensive free agency, you tell me which player that you wanted that you didn't get. Because everybody wants to play this game. Everybody wants to talk about the Patriots not spending. They didn't spend enough. You tell me which offensive player that you wanted that they didn't get. I'll run through the names right now because I went through all of them on my podcast throughout this offseason. By the way, Nick Cattle Show, if you want to check it out on YouTube. I went through all the names. They offered Calvin Ridley $40 million guaranteed. Ridley said no. He got a crazy contract from the Tennessee Titans. Ridley was paid as a top 5 wide receiver in the game. He is not a top 5 wide receiver in the game. Who else did you want? Tyron Smith, right? Everybody was talking about Tyron Smith. I was talking about Tyron Smith. Nice left tackle, 1 year, bridge guy. Well, guess what? Tyron Smith came out and said he was going to play for Rodgers and the Jets and pretty much nobody else. Maybe he would have returned to Dallas, but he wanted to go to a team that had a chance to win. He was not signing a 1 year incentivized deal to play for a team that just won 4 games last year. So what's your beef? Are you upset they didn't sign Jonah Williams? Is that the end-all, be-all? Is that really what has you pissed? Is that they didn't sign Jonah Williams to a contract? And from what I've heard, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I can't guarantee you. I have no idea if Chuks Okorafor is going to work out. But I don't think it's crazy to look at Chuks and say, hey, they paid Chuks right away. They gave him that 1 year deal, and they believe he can play left tackle. And so they took a swing on Okorafor versus taking a swing at Jonah Williams if Jonah even wanted to come here. You've got to remember something. And it's not the case every single negotiation. And I'm not excusing every single negotiation. But players have to want to come here. And if offers are close, you're coming off of a 4-win season with a rookie head coach, with a bunch of new staff, living in Massachusetts, which is pricey. The taxes are a real thing. I know some people go, yeah, right. The taxes are a real thing for players. For some players, not every single one of them, but for some players, yes. The state tax bothers them. So you've got to fight through all of that. You can't just put a gun to a player's head and say, sign this contract right now, you have to join us. That's not how free agency works. Note the word free. So I look around, it's the wide receiver conversation that people go crazy about. You and I can go back and forth. We could go tit for tat on Calvin Ridley, and we can disagree on Calvin Ridley. I wanted Calvin Ridley, but I would not have paid Ridley what Tennessee paid him. I would have walked away from that deal. I had no problem with Wolf walking away from that deal. I think that is too much money for Ridley. God bless him for getting the deal. Good for him and his family. But we get into this conversation. Tell me, did I miss another wide receiver one that changed teams this year? Michael Pittman stayed, right? He was tagged. He got a deal. Devontae Smith got a deal with Philly. Mike Evans wanted to take a look at free agency. Mike Evans, reportedly, the Patriots were interested. Guess what? Mike Evans' wife said, we're not moving. We ain't leaving Tampa. Mike Evans stayed in Tampa. Go up and down the list. There hasn't been a bona fide wide receiver one traded as of right now. And the only guy that's being talked about right now is Ayuk. And it's been reported the Patriots have called San Francisco about Ayuk. So where is this magical number one receiver that people want? Where is that magical number one receiver coming from right now? Because the only guy that was out there was Ridley in free agency. And nobody is getting traded right now. Now, if somebody gets traded, if Ayuk gets traded, if DK Metcalf gets traded, and the Patriots aren't making that move, then we have the conversation. But they have spent money. Depending on which category you're talking about, they're in the top 5 in spending. They're in the top 8 in spending. They're in the top 9 in spending. But they've spent. And they wanted to spend more. And they're still looking to spend more with the phone calls to San Francisco. So I disagree that they just haven't spent this offseason. I think your bigger issue is what they spent the money on. Cattle's in for Murray, 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Sports Hub headlines.
Never get to that ESPN ranking. That page. In or out coming up shortly. Let's get. How many people do you think I offended by saying the Patriots actually spent some money this offseason? I know some people were in their like car or wherever they are listening. They're like, la, 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 la. They don't want to hear that. I get it. I understand. Probably angered some people. Did I anger the YouTube chat? Hello to the YouTube world. I do a terrible job saying hello to the YouTube people. I'm just not like, it's funny. I do a podcast on YouTube, but I'm just, when I get into a radio studio, I've got to try to kick my brain back into say hello to the YouTube peeps.
There are some upset YouTube. Top 5 spending on what? Question mark is one of the comments I'm seeing.
See, but that's making my point.
Yeah, I mean, I looked it up over the break just because I was curious, and in just about any metric you want to use, they are 3rd or 4th in off-season spending.
They've spent money. The issue is people are not happy with who they spent the money on. But those are two different conversations. You can beef about what groceries they bought, but you can't beef that they bought groceries. They did. They've spent money. They spent chunks of money. It's just Kyle Duggar doesn't get people excited because he's already been here. Michael Wenu's an offensive lineman. But let me ask you, what if they didn't sign Michael Wenu? Imagine that. Imagine if they didn't sign Michael Wenu. What's your offensive line look like? I have no issue bringing back good football players. And that's what they did. Like, why do people not like who they brought back? Hunter Henry was the best tight end available in free agency. They brought him back. Michael Wenu was one of the best offensive linemen available in free agency. Brought him back. Duggar, to me, was a slight overpay. But they put him next to the line of scrimmage, which is hopefully what they do this year. Duggar's an impact player. Showed that in 22. Are you upset they signed Jacoby Brissett? Jacoby Brissett is better than any quarterback that played for this football team last year. So you mad about that? You mad about bringing back Kendrick Bourne? Kendrick Bourne was the best receiver on this team last year before the injury. And his contract is super team-friendly. Are you angry that they spent money on Christian Barmore when Barmore was arguably their best player in the final 2 months of the season last year and looks like he's about to make a leap to be a top 5 to 10 interior defensive lineman in football? You upset about the Barmore contract? That contract was also team-friendly when you look at the details. But it was real money spent. So what are you mad about? Who did you want them to go out and get that they didn't get? I think it comes down to one guy. It's the Calvin Ridley thing. Skaz, do you think if the Patriots paid Calvin Ridley what Tennessee did, and Ridley was a Patriot, do you think that would have stopped all of these people from talking and asking the question of like, oh yeah, but who'd they sign?
Well, I think you'd get the beautiful dichotomy of people saying, well, they spent money, but is Ridley really the guy? You really need to spend that much money on a guy like Calvin Ridley? That's who you're spending the money on? So I think Calvin Ridley's a fine player, but I'm with you. I don't think he's anywhere near the top of the league, or, maybe in a few years that contract doesn't look as bad, but I have zero problem with the Patriots not paying Calvin Ridley.
I understand the history. I understand the narratives. I get all of it. Trust me. I truly understand all of it. And this team has been towards the bottom of spending for a long time. We know that. It might be a very controversial take on my part, but I believe Bill Belichick was in charge of the books. Now, if you want to pay somebody a ton of money, of course you always have to get it okayed by the owner. But when you look at how this offseason went, do you think Bill Belichick is offering Calvin Ridley $40 million guaranteed? I don't think he is. I'm not sold that Belichick would have been calling San Francisco about Ayuk. I'm not sold that Michael Wenu and Kyle Duggar and all those guys would have been back here on the contracts that they got. And guess what? The Patriots are going to have over $100 million in salary cap space next offseason as well. So I want to know why people are upset. What magic free agent was out there? Which one did you want? Which one got you all excited? Got you lubed up? Which one? We talked about Tyron Smith. Skaz, was there any offensive free agents on your list that you're like, oh, man, they got to go out there and get that guy?
I kind of wanted Saquon at one point, but he didn't make sense. Not for this roster, not for this team. No, I don't think. And I heard Barth mentioning this a little bit earlier too. It might have been yesterday, but on the Ayuk thing, where every year now we have these wide receivers that shake loose, and it's not one or two, and they're not B guys. Guys like Ayuk. I mean, T. Higgins is a guy who we think is going to shake loose, maybe. So this is a game the Patriots can kind of wait and pick their spot. And when you're a bad team, I'm in favor of them doing that. They don't need to spend money to spend money. And like you said, they have spent money. But yeah, I don't think they need to overextend themselves for anybody right now.
It was not a great offensive free agency. It just wasn't. You were really looking at Tyron Smith at left tackle, Calvin Ridley at wide receiver, Hunter Henry at tight end. You got Hunter Henry, right? You brought back Michael Wenu. Tyron Smith was going to go play for a winner. He's in his 30s. He's on his last leg. The options really just weren't there. So I'm begging for somebody to call me and say, this is the guy they missed out on that they should have went out and got. It wasn't Pittman. It wasn't Evans. It wasn't any of those receivers outside of Calvin Ridley that we talked about. No receiver has been traded. We know they've made calls to San Francisco. They talked to San Francisco at draft time. They're still talking to San Francisco right now. So which one was the one that you went, Which offensive player? Again, Ridley, we can go tit for tat. We can go back and forth on Ridley. I get it. If you want to spend your money on Ridley, I get it. At least that's a conversation. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray on a Thursday night. 617-779-0985 is the telephone number. In or out with Skaz coming up.
What's it gonna be, McFly? Are you in or out? without a doubt. I'm the one you need for a dirty deed. I'm the best. Success is guaranteed.
At Nick C Radio. Any more angry YouTube people out there? Or have they calmed down a little bit?
I've pushed away from the chat. They're usually not the happiest of bunches, but I think they've calmed down a little.
Well, hopefully they have. Glad that they're with us, though. YouTube people, hello. That's the camera, right? Am I doing it right? Is that the one?
It's either that one. I think technically they all work, but yes, the cameras for YouTube are automated. So whenever you speak, they're supposed to cut right to you.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's that one. I'm guessing it's camera 1. YouTube people, let me know. Am I looking like at you, or is something off here? You got YouTube in there, Skaz. Can't you just pull it up?
Yes, I just pulled it up, and you are looking. It is this one. Yep, you are looking directly
at it. The black one or the white one? The camera. The one up top or the one below?
I believe the one up top. I think below are the TV cameras.
That's what I think. Because the ones below are fancy looking. So, how we doing? There it is. All right, give you some in or out.
All right, Nick. Major League Baseball has been, trying some new things recently, the pitch clock and others, to try and get younger fans in. So it was announced today that in 2025, we will be getting MLB Rivalry Week. This will be a two-parter, but we'll start with MLB Rivalry Week in general. Are you in or out?
Out. It's trying to be like college football. Like, understand, you have a 162-game season, okay? Rivalry week doesn't work when you play 162. Nobody cares. So it's just another week of baseball. Oh, no, wait a minute. Now I'm going to watch this week because it's rivalry week. No, you still have another 150 games to funnel through. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. That kind of thing works when you got 17 games or you got, college football, you got 11, 12 games. That makes sense. Baseball, no, stop it. It's a cheesy way to try to sell. And I bet you they have all sorts of, do they have rivalry week jerseys and hats and stuff?
I'm sure that's coming.
Yeah, they're going to try to sell it. Guess what? Not many are going to buy it.
So diving deeper into Rivalry Week, this might have upset me more than the ESPN Top 100, but they reveal the matchups, and you get, ones you would assume, Cubs White Sox, Angels Dodgers, Rangers Astros, but then you get Mets Yankees, and for Red Sox Rivalry Week, you get Braves Red Sox.
So stupid.
So are you in or out on Braves Red Sox rivalry?
I'm out. I'm out on this whole damn thing. I'm out on the rivalry week, first of all, and then I'm out on the Braves versus the Red Sox. Why? Because it used to be the Boston Braves. Is that what we're going with?
Yes, it is listed as a historical rivalry.
Oh, my. And they're like, Boston Braves. Let's call it the historic rivalry. Nobody here in Boston, nobody here in New England thinks of Atlanta as a rival. Nobody. You know what we think about when we think about Atlanta? 28-3. That's what we think about. That's the only thing we think about. It may be Dominique Wilkins, the 1 year he played for the Celtics. Some reason I'll never forget, number 12. That's what he wore. He had a big night, I think, against the Houston Rockets. I remember the weirdest things. But, that's all we think about when we think about Atlanta. Mark Lemke? Maybe you think about him randomly? The whole thing is just ridiculous. It's just absolutely, it's absurd. And nobody's going to care.
Yeah, strong out on that one.
I mean, I'll give baseball some credit to try to figure out something different, but it's just not there, man.
No. All right, so we'll stick with Major League Baseball. It is the All-Star break, and we have teams announcing new menu items for the second half of the season.
Ooh.
We will start in Colorado. The Rockies have introduced Polar Pasta. This is vanilla ice cream with donut holes, strawberry syrup, and mint. Are you in or out?
In. Although, I will say, ice cream and me don't necessarily get along. Kind of like borderline lactose intolerant deal. I love ice cream now. Let's say I love mayo, but mayo doesn't love me. So if you said, Nick, if you could eat that with no repercussions, I'd say I'm in. So I'm in because it sounds like something I would venture to go after.
All right, we will head to the Royals for this one. And this one might take me a second because this thing is loaded. This is called the Taste of the K Taco. Guessing the taste of Kansas City. It is a hot dog wrapped in a cheeseburger quesadilla, topped with barbecue brisket, fries, lettuce, pickled onions, sriracha Cracker Jacks, and barbecue sauce.
Out. First of all, just way too much. Way too much. It's like they just kept asking, what more can we throw on this thing so we can put it online? You know what I mean? Like some of these meals, some of these ballpark burgers and stuff, it's like, how outrageous can we get so we can market this thing and people... But I'm mainly out because of the sriracha. Spice is no good, man. Again, I'm telling you, I do not have, like, a powerful stomach, folks. The spice, not great. I don't like the spice going in. I don't like the spice going out. I don't like anything about the spice. I don't like breathing in spice. My wife, Kelly, she is like the spice queen. She can't get enough of it. I'm out from the beginning. There's nothing fun about that. It burns your mouth. It burns your tuk-tuk. I got no time for that. I don't want to be hurting the next day. When I eat something, I want to enjoy it. And then I certainly don't want to be hurt the next day by it.
All right, we'll stick with food. We're food heavy tonight. Why not? Something that I remember from my youth was the Pizza Hut buffets. They've been discontinued since 2014, but Pizza Hut recently announced they are bringing back the Pizza Hut Pizza Buffet and Salad Bar. So, Nick, are you in or out on the Pizza Hut buffet?
Okay. Buffets kind of freak me out a little bit. People got to listen to this. This guy's the worst because he doesn't eat spicy food. He's borderline lactose intolerant. I'm also kind of a germaphobe, even though I've had to force myself to get over the germophobia being in this studio. Because
you are sitting in the right chair, though, for a germaphobe.
Yeah. Felger and Bertrand and I don't know who else. I know Kendra's a big germaphobe. We've had conversations about it. So the whole, like, grabbing food that people are grabbing, not cool. Not cool with that. Like, I'm like, I go to a bar. Like, I was at Xfinity, not Infinity. Xfinity last Friday for Dave. And I was drinking Corona because I had to work the next day. So I'm like, I'm not going to get into the whole craft thing. I have a couple Coronas, whatever. And I'm like one of those people where, like, don't grab the lime with your hand and put it in my drink. It freaks me out. Like, do you have one of those scoop things? Use a scoop thing. I don't know where your hands have been. Like, you know what? Here's the thing. So the buffet, the idea of it, I'm in. Again, grease, not great with my stomach. But the idea of buffet pizza, 100% in on that. But here's the thing of, like, you know what? Germaphobes are just, they're very conscious of everything. That's the difference, right? It's like kind of a different level of OCD. Like, people don't think about things. They just act. My wife's like that. If you haven't noticed, Kelly is the complete opposite of me. If something hits the floor, she'll eat it. I'm like, oh my God, it's awful. She doesn't care about bartenders grabbing, if you're a bartender, why do you grab the top of the glass? Have you ever seen this? Why? I had somebody, I asked for a plastic cup. They put their hand on the top of the cup. I go, no, I didn't ask for, just give me your hand and I'll lick your hand. That's what this is. And see, people don't think to that minutia. But I don't know what that dude behind the bar's been doing with his hands before he grabs my lime. No. It's awful, right?
No, I'm with you on that one. It can't be anything good.
Don't be grabbing stuff and then grabbing my stuff to put it in my drink. So, the buffet thing's a little...
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, we'll end with this one. We got one more. I don't know if you're a Dune fan, Dune 1 and Dune 2.
People are like, I'm telling you, this guy's the worst.
But HBO announced that we will be getting a Dune TV show called Prophecy, set 10,000 years before the movies. So, Nick, are you in or out on a Dune TV show?
Have no idea what the hell that is. No clue. No clue. So I guess I'm out. I'd have to start from the beginning, and I'm out.
Yeah, it's like I think they're the books that they're based. George Lucas read them and then came up with Star Wars or something like that. I'm sure I got that wrong and just pissed off a bunch of people.
Oh yeah,
I think that's kind of what happened.
Sorry, but I'm not into the Star Wars thing. Like the first Star Wars and stuff, cool, but I'm not judging you. I'm just it's to me it seems like there's a lot. Like you have to invest yourself a ton into it, and I just don't have the time.
Yeah, that's how I feel about like big series that I missed. It's just I don't have the time to go back and watch.
No, I invest my time in professional wrestling, so trust me, I'm not calling Star Wars people geeks because I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I get it. Don't you judge me. People are going, wait a minute, lactose intolerant pretty much, doesn't like spicy food, can't eat greasy food, germaphobe, and loves professional wrestling. What a loser. I like cool things too, all right? Get out of my face. Have we concocted...
The only place to hear the local call of the game is right WBC-FM and HD Boston. Boston's home for sports. 98.5. The Sports Hub. Beasley Media Group station. Sports Hub headlines.
Red Sox 2025 schedule released today. They'll open up in Texas for a 4-game series on March 27th. First home game against the Cardinals on April 4th. Sox back on the field tomorrow night after the All-Star break in L.A. against the Dodgers. Nick Pivetta will be your starting pitcher. Randall Cobb has retired from the NFL. Meanwhile, the Dolphins placed Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips on the PUP list today. In the NBA, Clippers traded Russell Westbrook to Utah in a sign-and-trade deal that lands former PC point guard Chris Dunn in L.A. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Westbrook will be bought out by Utah, end up in Denver. Finally, the Open in Troon. England's Daniel Brown leads at 6 under with Ireland's Shane Lowry 1 shot behind, and America's Justin Thomas sitting in 3rd at 3 under. Sports Hub headlines brought to you by Safety Insurance, providing comprehensive coverage for your auto, home, and business. Ask your independent agent about safety. I'm Nick Cattles on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Your next update at 9:30.
Let's talk turkey, shall we?
Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, in the sports industry, that's what you say.
Got your talking head right here, buddy.
98.5 The Sports Hub.
Rest in power, Bob Newhart. Dude, a lot of famous people have passed away in the last 7 days. It's kind of crazy. It's like every other day. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday night. Nick Cattles in for Joe Murray. Shout out to the YouTube people. Shout out to the radio people. Appreciate y'all. One and the same. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. Skaz on the 1s and 2s. Quinnipiac Kevin, our intern, is once again out of the production room. He's been outside of the room more than he's been inside of the room tonight. He might not be interested in the program. I don't know what's going on. Can we lock him out? Don't even let him back in. Does he have bladder problems? What's going on? Why are you leaving the room every 5 minutes? You okay?
He's a very hydrated individual.
You good? He's like, oh. All right. We've established that we are not trading a 2025 first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk. We talked about that the other night. But is there another option? And I ask you this because I was perusing the internet, and David Lombardi at The Athletic wrote about the different options the Niners have with Ayuk. And one of the options was trading Ayuk. And here's what Lombardi wrote. Only a trade bringing another player could satisfy the Niners' goal of improving the team now. For argument's sake, if the Chargers offered Joey Bosa, or if another team was willing to trade them a quality offensive lineman, Lynch and Coach Shanahan would be obligated to listen. Obligated. This reads to me like the Niners, somebody with the Niners, are telling Lombardi that if they're going to trade Ayuk, it might actually take a player instead of a first-round pick. That's how I read this. He's talking about Joey Bosa. He's talking about a quality offensive lineman and says that Lynch and Shanahan would be obligated to listen. Such moves would theoretically give the Niners a chance to improve enough at one position to outweigh the loss of Ayuk at receiver. Here's my question to you. If San Francisco answered Elliott Wolf's phone call and said, we will trade you Brandon Ayuk, but we want Matthew Judon in your second-round pick next year, would you say yes to that? Skaz, in or out on that deal? Judon and a second-round pick next year for Ayuk.
Yeah, I think I'd be in on that. I'm of the belief that Matthew Judon is a very, very good player, but what he's done, second half of the seasons and with his injury risk and, he's getting older, I would do that.
I ask about Judon because Lombardi brings up Joey Bosa. And when you look at Joey Bosa, and I know that Joey's brother Nick plays for San Francisco, but when you look at Joey Bosa and you compare him to Matthew Judon, Judon is the superior player. The superior player. Now, Bosa's 29, so Bosa's younger. Judon's going to be 32 next month. But Bosa has played only 14 games the last 2 years. Bosa has 19 and a half sacks his last 3 years. Judon has that same number his last 2 years. Judon, yes, he missed a bunch of games last year, but he has still played 7 more games the last 2 years than Bosa has. Bosa has a potential out on his contract after next year, or after this year, going into 25's offseason. And we all know that Judon has that 1 year left at about 6.5 on the books. He's got another $1 million he can make. Judon has by far the easier contract to absorb. He's the better player. He's been healthier than Joey Bosa. I think it's actually tough because Judon is an impact player. He is. When he plays, he is a high-impact player. But I would pull the trigger on that. What do you think you'd get Judon for? Like, if you were another team and you were looking to trade for Matthew Judon, what would you be willing to give up? 4th-round pick, maybe? Maybe a 3rd-round pick, late 3rd-round pick? So if you think of Judon's value as, say, a 4th-round pick, in essence, you'd be trading a 2nd and a 4th for Ayuk. And I would do that. I would do that deal. Because I don't think Matthew Judon is here for the long term. I could end up being wrong. Judon might be here for the next 3-4 years. But it feels like we're getting closer to the end. It feels like we're inching closer to Judon being out of New England versus being here in New England. At least that's what it feels like. And so if Judon is not part of your plan, then yeah, look to move him. Now, if you can get Judon to say yes to a contract where you bump him up this year, maybe you give him some money for next year, and he stays here through 2025, that's fine. But if you're not going to be able to get a deal like that done, and Judon is not a part of your future plans, then you move Judon and a 2nd-round pick for Brandon Ayuk. Absolutely. And then you see what you have in Keion White. You move on from Judon, and you try to develop Keion White, and you see if he's ready to be a true blue-chip edge defender at the NFL level. You give him all the opportunity that he deserves. You throw him out there, you keep playing him, and you see what happens. Ayuk's a wide receiver 1, man. And I know some people are going back and forth on this. Maybe he's not a top 10 receiver. Maybe he is a top 10 receiver. People will argue and they'll say, well, he plays for San Francisco. They have a great scheme, a great play caller. They've got Debo. They've got Kittle. They've got Run CMC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I still think Ayuk, his skill set, he's a number 1 receiver. He's a wide receiver 1, day 1 in your room if you get him. 26 years old. So when you look at Judon and you say, he's probably not a part of the future plan, Ayuk certainly is. Ayuk is that guy that you bring in. And you say, You are our number one receiver for the next 4 or 5 years. That's who Ayuk is. That's what he would be for you. Judon, as impactful as he has been, likely gone. And Ayuk's fit is great. I wouldn't trade the first because, as we talked about, you're looking at maybe a top 5 pick there. Worse, probably a top 10. But Ayuk is a fantastic fit. The scheme, Shanahan's scheme, there are a lot of things that you can correlate from one system to the other system. Alex Van Pelt can run a lot of the same kinds of plays and looks that Shanahan does and get the most out of him. You need a bona fide X receiver. Ayuk is your bona fide X receiver. I mean, the guy is just a big play waiting to happen. 18 yards per catch last year. It's a big number. So he's a great fit. He's young. You got to pay him. But I would do it. Ayuk could get you to 7 wins. He could get you to 7 or 8 wins. And if you get to 7 or 8 wins, I know that's not great for your first round pick, but that second round pick you gave up theoretically along with Judon, it's not as good of a pick now because you got Ayuk. So I ask you, maybe you think that's too much. 617-779-0985. Would you trade Matthew Judon and a second-round pick in next year's draft for Brandon Ayuk? Is that a no-brainer to you? Is that too much? If you're San Francisco, is it not enough? 617-779-0985. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray on this Thursday. Aside from your reaction, we're talking about Ayuk, but maybe we're talking about the wrong receiver. That's coming up.
More Joe Murray coming up on the Sports Hub.
So how long does the YouTube feed stay on when we go to break? It's like a few seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
So I was going to go drink my water, and I think I spilled it all over me, and I didn't know if everybody on YouTube saw it. Got a hole in my lip.
Haven't seen any comments on that yet.
Maybe they didn't see it. Maybe they didn't catch it. Nick Cattles in for Joe Murray tonight. 98.5 The Sports Hub. I am not in tomorrow night. Who's in tomorrow night? Is Sean? My guy Sean Silver. Love Sean Silver. Great dude. We're supposed to go out and get a craft beer at some point soon. I got to text him. So Sean will be in tomorrow night. I will be on the station all over the weekend. I'll be on Saturday 2 to 5 solo, and then I'm working with Cerrone on Sunday. I think it's 10 to 2 on Sunday. The boss texted me the other night, so I didn't originally have it on my schedule, but I think Sunday is 10 to 2 with Cerrone. Yeah, Skaz, give me the thumbs up. Looking forward to it. Have not worked with Cerrone yet. Want to talk Celtics with Cerrone. I think him and I could really get into some things with the Celtics. So that's what I'll be doing over the next few days. Hopefully all of you are enjoying what is to be, I think, a great weather weekend from what I saw. Tomorrow especially is supposed to be great. So enjoy yourself out there. 617-779-0985. Would you trade Matthew Judon and your 2025 second-round pick for Brandon Ayuk? This is not some just random question I'm throwing out there at you. The reason why I'm asking you this question is because David Lombardi, who is the beat writer for the Niners, wrote in The Athletic that only a trade bringing another player could satisfy San Francisco's goal of improving the team now. He mentions Joey Bosa. So I'm saying to myself, well, if he's going to mention Joey Bosa, an edge, the Patriots happen to have a high-impact edge that has 1 year left on his deal that might not be here beyond 2024. If they would be interested in Joey Bosa, it would stand to reason they would be interested in Matthew Judon. And Lombardi wrote that, if it was an edge or if another team was willing to trade a quality offensive lineman, that the Niners would be obligated to listen. The idea would be, you're moving on from Ayuk, but you're bringing in a player that helps you immediately. And as we know, they have Super Bowl aspirations out there in San Francisco after getting there and losing last year against KC. Let's go to TJ in Manchester. Hey, TJ.
Hey, I was just calling. I was looking at the stats, and I just saw that Judon was a 4-time Pro Bowler, leading up to his injured season. And I think that, considering that, and also a second-round pick, would be tough to give up for just one season of a wide receiver with this upcoming core. So, it's flashy, but I don't know if I agree with it.
All right, TJ, thanks for the phone call, man. I appreciate you. You might argue, like TJ argues, that it's too much. Now, I don't think Ayuk is here for 1 year. You make the trade for Brandon Ayuk, you're giving him the extension. Everybody knows that he wants the extension, right? I mean, that's the reason why he wants out of San Francisco right now. He either wants to be paid or traded, right? Pay me or trade me. That's the whole thing. And so whoever trades, if the trade did happen, if whoever made that deal for Ayuk, you would have to keep him long-term. You're not giving up the assets it's going to take to bring him to your organization and then say, all right, we're one and done here. And you don't want to franchise tag him. You don't want to deal with the franchise tag with San Francisco next year, right? Because who knows what that brings. Now you got to deal with the drama of that. So if you're going to trade for him, whether it's right now or if it's him on the franchise tag via San Francisco, you're going to want to hammer out a deal right away. But maybe, just maybe we're talking about the wrong receiver. Because also this week, and it feels like this story was out there for like 5 minutes, and then the Ayuk conversation began. Also out there, T. Higgins. Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network reported this week, Higgins did not sign, and he is not going to sign a long-term deal. He has zero intention, and Cincinnati has zero intention of offering a long-term contract extension. So T. Higgins, as of right now, he's set to hit unrestricted free agency next offseason. Now, of course, Cincy could tag Higgins and try to deal him next offseason, but even if that's the case, you're not going to have to pay as much for Higgins as you would for Ayuk. So are we talking about the wrong receiver? Ayuk is better than Higgins. Higgins, to me, is more of a 1B/2A. But you could talk me into believing that Higgins is a true number one guy, given the rest of the pieces here. Like, I could see Higgins be a 1, Jalen Polk be a 2, Pop be your slot, be your 3 guy, Javon Baker, be in the mix as well, Kendrick Bourne. But T. Higgins, if he walked into the wide receiver room right now, he would be your best receiver. So to me, he's 100% on the radar. And I'm sure he is on Elliott Wolf's radar. He has to be. We all know that's a need. And if you can land somebody via free agency, I mean, if Higgins walked into unrestricted free agency and you just had to sign him, that's the perfect world. Because it's not really the Ayuk versus Higgins conversation, right? If you're trading for Ayuk versus just signing Higgins, it's what you had to give up for Ayuk and the money versus Higgins and just the money. You get Higgins, it's only going to cost you cash if he walks into free agency. You don't have to worry about dealing a first-round pick or a second-round pick or Matthew Judon. None of that's on the table. If he just walks right into free agency, you get to that table and you just pay him. You back up the Brinks truck without giving up any picks. I mean, that would be the dream scenario. Even if we all recognize that Higgins is not the player that Ayuk is, it would still be a dream scenario to land a player like Higgins at a position of need for just the money. You're not giving up any assets. You're not giving up any picks. You're not giving up any players. And you have tons of space. You still have $40 million left in cap space right now. And next year, going into next offseason, you have over $100 million in cap space. You have tons of space. That's not even a worry. And now you don't have to give up a pick, which means you can utilize that pick, if not multiple picks, in next year's draft to fill other needs. You might need a left tackle. You might need an edge if Judon walks. I mean, I wouldn't feel bad. Imagine if you had this receiver core for next year. Think about this young receiving core that you would have. And I'm just looking at, the young guys. Kendrick Bourne's not old, but if you told me next year the Patriots had T. Higgins, Jalen Polk, Pop Douglas, and Javon Baker as their top 4, that's not bad. Not the best receiver group in the league, but Higgins, Polk, Pop, Baker, and then you could add Kendrick Bourne to that mix. It's not bad at all. That wouldn't be too shabby. 617-779-0985. 617-779-0985. I wonder how many of you would rather have T. Higgins on the money next year versus trading for a Brandon Ayuk right now. I think it's a legitimate question, legitimate conversation. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray. 617-779-0985. Skaz and Kevin behind the glass. Riding alongside with this show. Got about 90 minutes left. The most critical contract of 2024 has been overlooked. I'll tell you which one it is coming up next.
Sports Hub headlines.
2025. Can I just say this unequivocally? Like, the time of an election is the absolute worst. I don't care about your politics. Like, I'm so, like, every 2 seconds on my timeline, something political. Both sides. It's like nonstop. Biden needs to be stepping down. Hulk Hogan's ripping his shirt off at the RNC. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't even follow political people, and somehow my timeline is inundated with this stuff. And then you got the ads that keep popping up from these politicians. Like, ugh. My goodness. Make it stop. My head's about to implode. And it's July. We still have 4 months of this crap. I'm so tired of it. For some reason, people think that I care about their politics. I don't. I find it, like, adorable that people think that. Like, I am going to tell you how I feel. Why? Did I ask? Drives me crazy. Anyway. Twitter. Get off of Twitter, Nick. I can't. It's my job. I got to sit here and watch all this drivel for the occasional sports tweet. I got to sift through 75 Hogans to get to a Russell Westbrook. It's supposed to be the other way around. Anyway, I digress. Let's skip to basketball here for a minute. Derek White's contract extension has mostly been overlooked. And I am here to tell you, out of all the contracts that have been signed this offseason, and I'm talking about Patriots, I'm talking about Celtics, out of all the contracts, Derek White's contract is the most critical deal of the offseason. Nick, what about Jason Tatum? Tatum's extension was predictable. Supermax deal. He was going to sign it. The reason why Derek White's contract extension is the most critical deal of the offseason is because he could have waited. He could have waited things out and made more money. It was not a given that White was going to sign this extension. He could have made it about him. He could have said, no, I want to be a number 2 option. Right? I want to go to another team and be the 2 guy. I don't want to be the 4th or 5th or 6th option on a team. I just won a title. It's not about winning anymore. I got my ring. I'm going to wait until next offseason and cash in. And I want people to truly think about this. I know the extension happened a couple weeks ago, but again, people just brushed by this. And I think the impact of this extension has been mostly ignored. We moved right on to Tatum's extension. We moved right on to Wick Grossbeck's sale. We moved right on to all this other stuff. But I want to highlight the Derek White decision and the Derek White contract because this was massive for the Celtics. White hits $30 million annually in 26-27, that season. That's when White will be making $30 million a year. Not until a couple of years down the road from right now. And I think people, not everybody, but I think some people fail to understand the gravity of this decision and this contract because what it does in essence is it gives you an opportunity to have a big 3 going forward. Because of White's contract being, only, quote-unquote, $30 million by 26-27, that gives you the inside track to have Brown, Tatum, and White for the long term. Porzingis, after this year, he's going to have 1 year left on his contract. I would not be surprised if Porzingis is not here much longer, given the second apron, the CBA stuff, the money he's about to make, the injury history. I wouldn't be surprised by that. I also wouldn't be surprised if Drew Holiday was not here for the long term. He's 34 years old. He just signed that big long-term extension with the C's, right? I would not be shocked if Drew and or Porzingis are off of this team within the next year or two. I know we don't want to talk about that, but I'm making that point because of how important the Derek White contract is. Because if you still have White, Brown, and Tatum, that's a damn good start, isn't it? And so as the second apron comes into play and the Celtics have to shed some salary, they got to shed some big contracts to lock Derek White in at this moment to a contract that is going to look like a freaking bargain 2 years from now. I'm telling you. When he's making $30 million a year, just wait to see what other players in the league are making $30 million a year at that point. Because the TV deal is going to kick in, the salary cap's going to go up, and teams are going to spend. And I think a lot of people, they underappreciated this bit of business by Brad Stevens. And they underappreciated Derek White in the fact that he was willing to take that deal right now. I mean, his deal when the TV money kicks in, we're talking ridiculous bargain for what he gives you. I remember when Avery Bradley, I don't know how many people remember this, Avery Bradley signed a contract extension back in the day. And there were some people that lost their ever-loving minds. I can't believe Avery Bradley's going to make that much. Within like a year and a half, 2 years, it was like, I can't believe Avery Bradley's only making that much. The contracts now, they look like deals. The Marcus Smart contract, remember? That was also controversial when he first got his extension. And then within a year or two, it was like, that's actually a pretty good deal for Marcus. That's not bad at all for the C's. Just wait. Having that Derek White contract on the books means you don't have to find a third guy to go with Brown and Tatum. And that's just huge. Because there are going to be lots of teams looking to shed payroll, shed players, try to find creative ways to get 3 really good players on their roster. The Celtics have now guaranteed themselves to have at least 3 really good players on their roster, 2 superstars and 1 damn good basketball player in Derek White. They, for all intents and purposes, guaranteed that for the next 3 or 4 years with that contract to White. And with White saying, yes, I'll do business with you. And we're talking about somebody whose personality fits perfectly with Tatum and Brown. If that does end up being your quote-unquote big 3, if you got to move on from Porzingis, Derek White has 0 issue being the third guy in that group. 0. And he's going to play defense, and he's going to do all the little things. That Derek White contract, that extension was the most significant bit of business done in the last 4 or 5 months at least here in New England with the teams. And I don't think people have talked about it enough. I don't think enough people truly appreciate what that contract means for not just the now, but also for the future. I am fired up about something. I got a banger for Murray's Musings coming up next.
You're listening to Joe Murray on 98.5. You're listening to Joe Murray on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
store. I get 0 emails. They don't send me an email to confirm that I got the hoodie. I wasn't even thinking. I'm like, okay, whatever. I ordered it. It's good to go. It's on my bank account. I see it. .com. Found the contact number, available 24 hours. Called them through the automated thing. Used your phone number. I was able to find the order number. Went online. It was delivered on July 3rd, and I don't have it on July 3rd to the least. I don't know if this person is actually a moron, but the act was very moronic. So they drop this hoodie right on the outside of the leasing office. Guess what happened? Oh yeah, somebody stole a bad one. So I'm feeling a little bit better about this situation. Kelly called the people at the NBA.com store, told them what happened. I'm getting a full refund. And delivered the hoodie, you stink at your job. And the person who stole my hoodie, you stink at life. You have to be just a terrible person to steal somebody's stuff. Just from you suck.
So now are you going to walk around your complex
the
there
first
looking?
person, when the weather gets cooler, if I see that Celtics hoodie on somebody, I have not gotten into a fight since I was like 13 years. I'm going to get into a fist fight in my 40s over this thing. I don't care. If they're big, I'm gonna Tanya Harding them. Pop, take a kneecap out. 25 schedule released earlier today. They will start the season in Texas for a 4-game series. March 27th, game 1. First home game of the year, April 4th against the Cardinals. Red Sox back in action tomorrow night. In LA against the Dodgers, Nick Pivetta gets the start. Some NFL news just came out. Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor arrested once again. TMZ.com says Taylor turned himself in on Wednesday. He faces a felony charge of failing to report a name or residence change as a registered sex offender. Taylor was arrested on similar charges in December of 2021. In the NBA, the Clippers traded Russell Westbrook to Utah in a sign-and-trade deal. Chris Dunn goes back to L.A. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Westbrook is going to be bought out by Utah. He'll end up with the Nuggets after he signs a deal with them. Finally, at the Open in Troon, England's Daniel Brown leads at 6 under with Ireland's Shane Lowry 1 shot behind. America's Justin Thomas is third at -3. Headlines are brought to you by Safety Insurance, providing comprehensive coverage for your auto, home, and business. Unless she's calling me the worst person, which I don't think is the case. Poor Kelly is stuck in fridge vortex right now. She's looking at all. She's supposed to be working. She's just stuck looking at fridges. Ugh. All right, let's go to Joe in West Virginia. Used to work at the Postal Service. Also wants to talk about Derek White. Hey, Joe.
Mr. Nick Cattle's behind every great man is a great woman. She'll probably pick out the fridge just the one you'd want.
No doubt
about it. Just the one she'll want as well. I just want to say real quick, I was a retired United States Postal Service employee. I would have left you a 3896 notifying you that you'd have to pick up that, the hoodie at the post office. And so it doesn't happen a second time to you. You might want to notify the post office that you would like to pick it up at the post office. So another pirate doesn't come along and take it again. I could see it happening again with the United States Postal Service.
That is fantastic advice, Joe, and I will take your advice. Thank you.
Hey, real quick with Wick and Derek White. Wick Grousbeck, I know he was 1.5% owner of the Boston Celtics, had to do 98.5, no pun intended, amount of the work to get the job done. And I thought he did a terrific job, as his dad Irving was basically had the money behind it all for the Boston Celtics and for his dad and his family. But Derek White is what I'd really like to talk about. As far as I can remember when he got flattened by Lively, and most guys would have ended up in the locker room and never came back out. I mean, the guy is nails. What I would want to ask you is, as a U.S. Olympian, to represent his country, did you ever picture that in your mind? I mean, I really like the guy, but I never quite pictured that. Hey, Nick, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Joe, thank you. I appreciate you. Fantastic call. So, no, I didn't think Derek White was going to be as good as he's been. When the trade was made with the Spurs, I wasn't one of those people like going crazy going, Derek White. I like Derek White. I didn't know if his shooting was going to be consistent because if I remember correctly, the year the Celtics traded for him, he wasn't necessarily lighting the world on fire from three, if I remember correctly. And the question was, was he going to be able to, and I'll look it up, but, was he going to be able to get back to, what he was? And so, yeah, that's exactly what happened. So when he was drafted, I'm guessing a volume thing. He only played 8 minutes a game his rookie year, so his three-point percentage was through the roof. But then you look at the next year, he was 33.8. And then in 2019-2020 for San Antonio, he shot 36.6% from three. So he looked like that he was gradually getting better. Then in 2020-2021, he dropped down to 34.6%. Then his final year, that first half of the season with the Spurs, he only shot 31.4% from three. So, broken clock is right twice a day. I'm right on this one. It was the shooting. And when he came, you look at what he shot for the Celtics in the 26 games, he was brutal. He stunk from three after the trade. He shot 30.6% from three-point land for the C's. And if you remember, he was not, I don't think he was very good in the postseason either. He missed some big shots. So that was the question. He had shown that he could shoot a little bit early on, but then it kind of trailed off. But the last 2 years, back with a vengeance. Last year he shot, 2022-2023, that season he shot 38%. By the way, he played all 82 games. And then last year he played 73 games and he shot 39.6%. So, this guy is now hovering around, some pretty hefty company when you're shooting 39% and almost 40%. I did not think he was going to be that good of a shooter. And I think his defense is better than I thought it was going to be. And I thought he was going to be a good defender, but I didn't necessarily see Derek White and say to myself, he's going to be able to defend 1 through 3, 1 through 4, and sometimes 5s. He's blocking Miles Turner turnarounds. He's blocking bigs at the rim. I didn't see that. And, of course, the Team USA talk, I think a lot of people forget. Team USA, they've had a lot of guys through the years that are role players. Like, this isn't the first time that they decided to bring role players onto the team. That has happened. Now, did I think Derek White would be one of those guys? No. If you asked me like a year ago, I probably would have told you that Derek White's ceiling was maybe a top 50 player in the league. But mostly like, 35 to 50 or 40 to 50. Now, who knows? I don't know what we would be saying about him if he had more opportunity. Now, of course, that cuts both ways, right? That cuts both ways because he's also getting great opportunities, great looks, because he's playing on this specific team. I don't know if White, if he's in San Antonio still, I don't know if he's averaging 27 a night, for example. And that's really the genius of Brad Stevens. I know it's been talked about a little bit, but Brad's ability to put a team together and to fit all of the pieces, he's just got an uncanny ability to understand what a team needs. And he's been able to piece this thing together, and it all just fits. It fits perfectly. So if you asked White to do more, he has shown he can do more. But he hasn't been asked to do more for a 30-game stretch, a 45-game stretch. So he might be in the perfect situation. He's going to get some open threes. You know, he's going to be able to react off of Brown and Tatum's drives. But I do think when you watch White, especially this past year, his ability to knock down, pull up jump shots, his ability to knock down, pull up threes, he can knock down transition threes. He knocks down above the break threes. He knocks down straightaway looks. He knocks down corner looks. He's got a really effective float game. You know, he's got that little push shot. He breaks down, gets into the paint, and he's got that little off the one leg push shot that he makes. He can also hit the mid-range shot. I mean, he's a really talented guy. He really is. His all-around game is just there's one thing. If you ask me, what's the one thing that Derek White needs to work on? Might sound random, but there's one thing. The entry pass. This is like a basketball nerd thing, but his entry passes, and I know there's not a lot of entry passes anymore because post play is like a thing of the past, and the Celtics play a lot of 5-out with Missoula. Derek White is atrocious at entry passes. When he's trying to get it into the post, he tends to kind of overfloat it. He puts a little bit too much on it. At times he doesn't put enough on it. That's one of the only weaknesses of his game is the entry pass. So when you're breaking down the entry pass as a weakness, as one of the only weaknesses, that should tell you how good of a basketball player the guy is. But that's because literally I really can't find anything else. He's a good rebounder for his size, spectacular defender, good shooter at all three levels. He's absolutely athletic enough. He does a good job of finishing around the rim given his size. I love Derek White. I love the dude. I said last year, at times I feel like he's my favorite player on the team. Always doing the right thing. Always saying the right thing. And then they brought in Drew Holiday, and it's like, well, it's an embarrassment of riches. Enjoy it while it's happening. Just an absolute embarrassment of riches because of what Brad Stevens was able to build here. And that's why you got a championship, and hopefully you see another one happen next year. Hopefully. But it feels good to have one. Feels really good to have that 18th banner. 617-779-0985. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray on a Thursday. Speaking of the Celtics, I have a thought. A lot of people have been saying things about Tatum and the locker room and Jaylen Brown and Derek White. I want to respond. What is going to be my response? Find out next.
More Joe Murray coming up on the Sports Hub.
fan. He's a lot of energy.
Dutcher and Hardy, weekday mornings at 6 on the Sports Hub. Felger and Maz are just his pregame.
They've been getting wholesale deals for years.
It's Joe Murray on the Sports Hub.
I don't know what Kevin has added tonight. So I'm off of Twitter. I'm done. My head's about to explode. I tweeted out, I'm like, just nonstop Hogan's in my face. Oh, yeah. That's Macho Man. Somebody tweeted like, well, there's not much sports happening today. I'm like, yeah, I know, but can we have like music tweets or movie tweets or television show tweets or? I guess not. So I'm done with that. And I don't care about, I'm not talking about one specific side. I don't care. So I'm off Twitter. Skaz, you take it from there.
Not the best place to be tonight is Twitter.
For the next 4 months, I feel like we'll be saying that. It's just too much. It's all. I went to my personal Facebook page today, and I posted. I'm like, I don't care about your politics. I don't care. I don't care. You know what I want to do? I want to go back to the days. It sounds simple. When like you could just go to a bar and hang out and not have to worry about hearing about anything. It's just like head's about to implode. Moving on. Winning can change teams. Winning a title can change a team. Winning a title can change an individual player. And we had just last week this conversation about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? Some people were not thrilled with how Jason Tatum answered the Jaylen Brown snub question. And we had to deal with all the Jaylen might be mad at Jason. What happens if Jaylen is not happy with Jason? Is this going to fracture the team? And let me tell you right now, I have zero concerns about the room. Zero. If there's one thing I'm not worried about with the Celtics after winning the championship, if there's one thing I'm not worried about, it's that this locker room all of a sudden is going to do a complete 180 and not like each other and start bitching about stuff. I'm not worried about it. Zero concerns about the room. And it starts with Brad Stevens. Stevens has, I mentioned this last segment, he's got an uncanny ability to build a team, but he also has a great ability because of his knowledge as a head coach to read a team. He understands what a team needs, what you might want to get rid of from a certain team. He understood that Marcus Smart had to go. He'll never say it, but he knew it. That's why he was gone. And people might say, no, he was gone because, the Malcolm Brogdon physical thing, but no. I said this a couple of weeks on a show that I did. You might have heard it at the time. If you didn't, I believe it was Kevin O'Connor, but somebody reported that multiple sources, it was either O'Connor or Zach Lowe, that what happened last year, yes, the original plan was to trade Malcolm Brogdon as part of the Porzingis trade and keep Marcus Smart. But the Celtics were going to trade Marcus Smart anyway. The plan was to trade Brogdon for Porzingis, and then the Celtics were going to trade Marcus Smart for Tyus Jones and 2 first-round picks. That's what the plan was. So reportedly, no matter what, Smart was gone. And that's because Stevens knew. Stevens knew if we move Smart, now we allow Tatum and Brown to be the leaders of this team. Their voices get louder. They get a little bit more demonstrative. The hierarchy is the hierarchy. You don't have to worry about Smart taking shots at bad times, taking shots from Brown and Tatum at the most inopportune time. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? And that's because Stevens, he knew the team. And he knew what the team needed, and he knew what the team did not need. And what did Stevens do this offseason? He brought almost everyone back. The only guys that aren't back are Svi and O'Shea Brissett. But he brought those guys back. He brought the Cornets back. He brought the Cadas back. And I'll always remember what Stevens said to NBA TV after Game 5. Stevens said to that group, he said to that broadcast team, right, in the postgame, that he just wanted self-aware players, guys that are self-aware. And he feels like they have a team full of self-aware human beings. So I trust Stevens' ability to read a team and know what they need. He understands the chemistry of a team on and off the floor. I'm not worried about the room. I'm not worried about the room because everyone but Sam Hauser's been paid. Tatum's paid. Brown's been paid. Porzingis got his extension. Holiday got his extension. Horford got his extension last year. Derek White got his extension. Peyton Pritchard got his extension last year. Everybody on this team is getting paid. And so you don't have a bunch of pocket watchers in the locker room. You don't have a bunch of guys looking across the room and saying, that guy makes what? Really? That's what he's making? Why am I not making that? Everyone is paid other than Hauser. And usually when everybody on the team is paid, everybody is happy. Nobody is bitching about anything because at the end of the day, they're getting the check. I also look at the coaching staff. I have a lot of trust in Joe Mazzulla. I have a lot of trust in Sam Cassell. I think both of those coaches have a tremendous connection with their guys. And I look around and I see what other people who have been around the game for a while, who have covered this team, I see what they're posting about what this locker room was during this championship run. Michael Pina at the Ringer. He posted several weeks ago, one thing I've heard and been told repeatedly about last year's Celtics is that their locker room was the most supportive and placid anyone involved had ever been a part of. Keeping it together clearly matters to that front office and coaching staff. John Corrales, my buddy from BSJ, he posted, I've seen this a bunch this season. It was striking to me how amazing the locker room was. Never even a hint of an issue. Jason Tatum on the offseason, he said, Chris Forsberg reported this. Tatum said, quote, we got a hell of a team. I think the camaraderie that we had, we were such a close-knit team that we all got along really, really well, and I was looking for it. I didn't really want to change it, talking about bringing everybody back. I thought we had a really, really good team on all fronts as long as we stay healthy. So your best player is saying, we all got along. I wanted to run this back. I wanted everybody back. So I have zero concerns about this room. And I keep hearing people asking these kinds of questions. Oh, but what if Jaylen this? What if Jaylen that? What if Tatum this? What if Tatum that? And anything is possible. Anything can happen. And maybe crap hits the fan and all of a sudden something happens in that locker room and you've got an issue. But I'm just not worried about that. I don't think there's a high probability of that happening. I just don't see it. This team has fought through their adversity. They got through the adversity. They got to the mountaintop together. And this top 7, 8 is as strong as it can be. And I honestly believe that playing the best basketball is the only focus this team is going to have next year. I think they're going to be driven to go back-to-back. I think they're going to be driven by people that are going to say, oh, your path was easy. The East got better. What are you going to do against the Knicks? What are you going to do against the Bucks? Philly got Paul George. Watch out for them. I think this team is going to be as driven next year as they have ever been. Because you know what's better than winning a title? Going back-to-back and shoving it down everybody's throat to
It's Joe Murray on the Sports Hub.
Anybody in the YouTube chat, anybody listening, if you know what that song is, let us know. Did not ring a bell whatsoever. All right, so everybody's talking about Alex Cora's future over the last couple weeks, right? Alex Cora's future, what's going to happen with Alex Cora? But there is another leader of men in the city of Boston that we should keep an eye on. And that, of course, is Monty. The Bruins, they had their free agency. They spent their money. And I would say it's a playoff roster. I would say this team is a playoff roster. They helped themselves in several categories. Now, of course, we went through it. I still think they need scoring, but they helped themselves on the dot. They helped themselves in special teams. They helped themselves in a number of different areas. They should be more physical for sure. So they are right now, to me, they're a playoff roster. You got Swayman, who proved himself last year and then in the postseason. But the heat is going to be on Monty. Because if you are going to roll out Lysell and or Merkulov offensively, if you're going to bank on one of those two guys on your second line, which it certainly seems like they are, it seems like they want one of those two young guys to step up and be a legitimate wing on the second line. And, I mean, we're talking about Merkulov, who played all of, 4 games last year? Montgomery obviously did not trust him, did not want to play him a lot. It was a waste of 4 games. Lysell has not been here. So we're talking about a combined 4 NHL games between these two young guys, and you are going to bank on them being on your second line. At least one of them has to pop. And that comes down to, at least in part, it comes down to Monty. He's going to have to trust. He's going to have to trust the youth. He's going to have to believe and be patient. You see how Alex Cora has been patient with Cedar Rafaela. You see how he's been patient with young players. You see how he's brought along Jaron Durant. Monty needs to have that patience. He needs to be patient with Merkulov, Lysell. He needs to give them an honest-to-goodness opportunity to prove that they are NHL players. And not only that, that they can produce on a second line. Bruins also going to need more offense from their defensemen. You're going to have to get some more offense from McAvoy. And that's going to have to really, build through confidence where he feels like he can actually pull the trigger. My biggest issue with McAvoy is that he just, aside from his postseason, there was a lot going on there, but he never seemingly wants to pull the trigger. He's very hesitant offensively. That has to stop. They lost a bunch of goals between DeBrusk, Heinen, and JVR. They lost a bunch of goals from those guys. And yes, you bring in Lindholm, but it's not like Lindholm is a top-notch goal scorer. He broke 40 for 1 year a couple of years ago, but I think you would take 20 to 25 goals from Lindholm in a heartbeat. So that takes care of DeBrusk. But you still have to find ways to get that offense you lost from Heinen and JVR. It's about 30 goals or so. And so you need more offense from McAvoy. And the coaching staff has to stay on him and make sure he's going to be aggressive and he's going to shoot the damn puck. It's also going to come down to the staff to figure out Hampus Lindholm because he's been a disaster the last year plus. It began in the playoffs, not this playoffs that just passed, but a year ago. It began in that postseason. He wasn't very good all year long this past year. Then he got into the postseason. He was a train wreck. He was all over the joint. He couldn't keep the puck on the stick. He wanted to get rid of it as soon as he touched it. He was skittish. We know he's not the strongest dude. We know he's not physical. But he was all over the place, turning the puck over, getting rid of it way too soon. He was a mess. So you have to get more offense from McAvoy. You have to revitalize Lindholm in his game. What pairing are you going to put him on? I know some people think he might slide back to the third pairing. You're paying him like he's a top pairing guy. So are you going to slide him back to that third pairing? You're going to put Lowry on the second pairing with Carlo? Is that what you're doing? So, I mean, the thought is Nikita's going to be with Charlie, and then you're going to have, I guess, Lowry and Carlo, and that pushes Hampus Lindholm to that third defensive pairing on the left side to go at peak. If that's what you're going to do, he better be the greatest third pairing defenseman in the history of defensemen. I mean, he better produce. And a lot of this falls onto Monty. Getting enough, trusting the young guys in the second line at that wing position, getting more offense from McAvoy, revitalizing Hampus, and making sure you put him in the right spot defensively. You got to take care of Swayman. You got to manage the goaltending situation, right? How much are you going to play Swayman now with Allmark gone? You're going to have to use Korpisalo wisely. How much are you going to use Korpisalo? Can you get Korpisalo to play? I know that's going to fall a lot on goalie Bob, but still. I mean, Montgomery's going to have to handle the goaltending position with care. Find the right spots to play Korpisalo. Find the right spots to rest Sway. You got to get the best from Elias Lindholm. Can you get him back to what he was a couple of years ago? And it's the last year of Monty's contract. And we have not heard a peep about the Bruins extending him. We've heard nothing. This is it for Monty. He's a lame duck coach. Lame duck coach with a playoff roster, but a playoff roster with some questions that have to be addressed and handled correctly by the guy who is leading that dressing room. And that is Monty. And even if you get to the playoffs, I mean, does he have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals or is he gone? The legitimate question. Is that going to be the benchmark for him? I mean, we just saw them get to the second round and lose to Florida. We all know what happened the year before, that complete meltdown against Florida. So, is this Eastern Conference Finals for Monty or you're done? I don't know. I don't know what the expectation level is from Sweeney and Neely. But it's Monty's final year. And he has to do something, whether that's get to the Eastern Conference Finals or at least prove to Neely and prove to Sweeney that he is the guy to continue to coach this team. Because it doesn't seem like they have any urgency to get a deal done with him right now. So the warning shot, it's been fired across the bow. Monty's going to have to step up or step out. I think that's clear. I think team management is making that clear. If they were happy with him, he'd have an extension. We wouldn't even have this conversation. And remember, the whole thing with Cassidy was that he was tough on young players. He didn't get enough from the young players, right? He was unpopular in the dressing room. And the thought was, going to Monty, he'd be able to handle younger players better than Cassidy did. Now it's his time to prove it because he's got to get production out of some of these young guys. We'll see if he can do it. Because if he can't, he gone. They don't have any interest in securing his long-term future here in Boston right now. That should tell you everything you need to know. Nick Cattle's in for Joe Murray. We'll wrap things up next.
You're listening to Joe Murray on 98.5. You're listening.
So all night long, well, the last couple of hours, I've got the Summer League on one TV. Not paying attention to that, really, because it's the one that's to the right of me. But the one directly in front of me is a Nicolas Cage movie. I have no idea what this movie is. No clue. And I can't even tell you the last Nick Cage movie that I watched. And it made me wonder, because I've seen Nick Cage like all over the place. How many movies has he been in? I don't know. I just went to his IMDb page. And it says past film and video. I believe this is, I don't know if it's like as actor, producer, and director. But it says 133 titles. Now, I can't imagine he's been in all of, But, for example, just in 2024 alone, producer, Long Legs, producer of The Surfer, producer of Arcadian. He was in the Retirement Plan last year. He was in the Dream Scenario last year. He was in Sympathy for the Devil. He was in The Flash. He was in, but it has like Renfield. Renfield came out a long time ago. So I don't know how many movies, but he's been in a bunch of stuff. Bunch of stuff. I would love to get the exact number of films. Maybe I just Google it. I mean, they got to have it somewhere, right? Nicolas Cage, amount of movies. By 2020, this is according to Rotten Tomatoes. By 2020, Nicolas Cage had been acting professionally for nearly 40 years and had appeared in over 100 films. So maybe the 133 number is legit. My God, man. I think I've seen like 3 of them.
That's a lot more than I would have guessed. I think what's on in the studio right now is National Treasure, where Nick Cage and I don't know the other characters.
It is National Treasure because I saw Stu Greeny tweet out that whenever his National Treasure's on TV, he's going to watch it.
Yeah, they try and steal the Declaration of Independence.
Doesn't ring a bell, Skaz. Doesn't ring a bell.
I wouldn't call it a classic by any means.
I don't know how many classics Nicolas Cage has been in. I could tell you, Face Off was a good movie. I enjoyed Face Off. Jeez.
Con Air, maybe?
Never saw it. Moonstruck, classic. Moonstruck was a classic. His character was classic in that. I'm literally trying to say, guess how old Nick Cage is?
I guess like 60.
Nailed it. He's literally 60 years old. Good job by you. I feel like I might have seen Peggy Sue Got Married when I was younger. Not really sure. But I have not seen a lot of his films. Oh, Raising Arizona. How could I miss that? That might be his best. Raising Arizona is awesome.
Or The Rock with Sean Connery. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I don't think I saw that one. I know that's one of his famous ones. I don't think I've seen that one. I know a lot of people liked Renfield when it came out. But Raising Arizona was awesome. It's a very funny movie. But over 113 films. Quickly, SEC Media Day this week. And we know that Nick Saban is now with ESPN. Here was Saban on Get Up this week with a pretty funny story.
Well, it's a little different. I've never won a credential in my life and was always for 17 years able to get into SEC Media Day without a credential. I had to go back to the room today and get my credential to get in. So that's one of the biggest changes I see. It's not like it used to be.
Here's my question. Do you think it was intentional by the guard or whoever told him to go back and get his credential?
I would lean no. I would hope no. You know, it's, hey, guys, the greatest college football coach of all time.
So you think the person was just like a hardo?
Or just someone that literally had no idea he was Nick Saban. Like someone that just works at whatever convention center they're holding this at. It's just like, oh, it's just some old guy trying to sneak in because he loves college football.
Could see that. Because you have no idea who's working there. So maybe it was just like a good employee who was like, sorry, sir, no credential. You can't come in. And he's like, I'm Nick Saban. Or it could have been a dink. Like somebody who hates Alabama. It was like, oh, so you don't have your credential? And he's like, I'm Nick Saban. Sorry, sir, I don't know who Nick Saban is. You got to go back and get your credential now. Playing games. Auburn fan. LSU fan. I remember when you were with us.
Like the guy that poisoned the trees at Auburn or whatever.
Yeah.
One of those lunatics.
This was that person's get back. They're so happy. I wonder if he pitched a fit. Who knows? I wonder how he took that. Was he like, okay, and took it all like lightly, or was he like, do you know who I am kind of deal? I don't know if we'll ever know. Skaz, great job. Quinnipiac, Kevin, you were here. I will be back in this studio. I just get flipped off. I think I just get flipped off. Saturday, 2 to 5. Solo. Sunday, 10 to 2 at Cerrone. Everybody, be great. Enjoy the weather tomorrow. It's supposed to be awesome out. I'm Nick Cattles, and for Joe Murray, 98.5 The Sports Hub.